was a refreshing sleep. Oh, it's you! Where are you heading? May I join?
This is Venti. So as usual, you guys knocked the poll out of the park with this one. I never expected you guys to be voting this much, but 22,000 votes, which is almost twice as much as subscribers as we have. So there's some of you out there that are participating that aren't subbed. Anyways, Venti hit 44% out of those 22,000, which is gnarly. So we're going to be taking a look at Venti today. And on the next poll, there will not be any 5 stars because we're alternating every other. And probably just going to include one of the new characters. I didn't get Zhongli, so we're not going to include him. But I'll include the new Pyro chick, and we'll also just keep the other 3 that we already had, Dionakaya and Sucrose there as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and check out Venti. Venti is actually the very first limited edition character that we got into the game. He was on the very first limited banner that came out, and if you didn't snag him, if you weren't playing at that time, or you just weren't lucky enough to get him off of pity or anything like that, they've actually introduced a few things that kind of alleviate some of the specialty that that Venti has. Like they introduced that that gust pot or whatever it is, where it like throws you up in the air. That kind of mimics his E. The Viridescent Bow can kind of group characters together and stuff like that. So, wait, is that what that thing's even called? Yeah, the Viridescent Hunt. But you know, there's some things that Venti has that are quite unique that are super, super cool. And if you didn't get him the first go around, you'll definitely be looking forward to him on the next go around. So let's go ahead and check out our talents here. So our normal attack is a 6 consecutive shot with a bow. Charged attack is a aim shot, just like every other bow user, but it turns into a Nemo damage at fully charged. And our plunging attack is the still typical, just falling from the air with a bunch of arrows falling down with you. Here you can see how that breaks down at level 4. Of course, if you haven't leveled up your Venti, or if you haven't leveled higher, these numbers are going to be totally different than mine. But as you can see, that's kind of how it breaks down. We did do a video about like damage calculation, and I kind of showed Venti off a little bit in that video, just as like a here's how this works kind of thing, and we kind of went a little bit deeper into some of these numbers. But yeah, that's how that breaks down. Next, we have our E, our elemental skill. So it's called Skyward Sonnet. O wind upon which all hymns and songs fly, bear these earthwalkers up into the sky. God, I'm not looking forward to reading all this now. So on press, whenever you press your elemental skill, summons a wind domain at the enemy's location, dealing anemo damage and launching enemies into the air. That's pretty cool. On holding, though, it summons an even larger wind domain with Venti as the epicenter, so it actually spawns on top of you, dealing anemo damage and launching affected enemies into the air. And after unleashing the hold version of this ability, Venti rides the wind into the air. So whenever you hold it, it's one of the best ways that you can get around some areas in the world when you're exploring, looking for chests, things like that. You can just hold his E and just get an extra boost up a cliff so that you don't have to use as much stamina to climb it. Things like that. Enemies hit by Skyward Sonnet will fall to the ground slowly. So that is something actually very interesting, because as you launch certain enemies up into the air, you can switch off to a DPS, or if Venti is your DPS, you can just wail on them with the bow, and they are literally helpless in the air. They can't do anything while you're shooting at them. So that's pretty gnarly. Next, we have Wind's Grand Ode. So this is our elemental burst, or our Q ability. Fires off an arrow made of countless... Coalesced? Fires off an arrow made of countless coalesced winds, creating a huge storm eye that sucks in enemies and deals continuous anemo damage. And then it also has elemental absorption, so if it comes in contact with Hydro, Pyro, Cryo, or Electro, it will deal additional damage of that type. Elemental absorption may only occur once per use. So essentially, you are creating this giant vacuum, and you are sucking in enemies from a wide area, and they are being sucked into this one small point. And then from there, if you have another element that you want to imbue this anemo damage with, you can in turn use that skill and hit that element, and it will do additional damage on top of that. So it basically just does all kinds of damage at once. And as you can see this breakdown here, the damage over time, the additional elemental damage, how long it lasts, cooldown, and energy costs. So pretty neat stuff. We do also have Embrace of Winds. Holding Skyward Sonnet creates an up current that lasts for 20 seconds. That's pretty nifty. Oh, that's actually what gives you, don't quote me on this, it's been a long time since I've had Venti where he didn't have this talent unlocked. This may be the talent that gives you that extra height whenever you are exploring. It may not do it by default, but at what, Ascension level like 2, it gives it to you. So Next, we have Storm Eye, which regenerates 15 energy for Venti after the effects of Wind's Grand Ode ends. If an elemental absorption occurred, it also restores 15 energy to all characters of that corresponding element in the party. This is insane. This gives you so much more energy after just using your elemental burst. Like, it just gives you extra energy. And if you imbued it with a different element, it is going to increase the energy of those elemental characters in your party as well. So if you're rocking, you know, Venti and then 2 Electro characters and you imbued it with Electro, it's going to give those Electro characters 15 energy as well, which is just insane. Next, we have Wind Rider, which decreases gliding stamina consumption for your own party by 20%. This kind of doesn't really help him in battle at all, but it definitely helps with exploring and stuff like that. It's still kind of a throwaway, but it's helpful in some situations. Next, let's actually take a look at some constellations. So at level 1, we have Spitting Gales. Fires 2 additional arrows per aim shot, each dealing 33% of the original arrow's damage. So that actually just helps him do more DPS. Next, we have Breeze of Remnants. So at level 2, Skyward Sonnet decreases enemy anemo resistance and physical resistance by 12% for 10 seconds. Enemies launched by Skyward Sonnet suffer an additional 12% anemo resistance and physical resistance decrease while airborne. So this is actually pretty insane, the fact that you're lowering their anemo resistance and physical resistance by 12%, because if you pair this with other situations where not only are some characters only going to have 10% resistance anyways, you're going to be able to reduce it down to a negative resistance, which means they are taking additional damage. But if you pair it with like an enemy with cryo that you've been hitting with a claymore to induce shatter, which will lower their physical resistance even further, you know, you can kind of couple this with a couple of different things to help just do additional damage, which is actually really insane. Next, we have Ode to Thousand Winds. So increases the level of Wind's Grand Ode by 3. Maximum upgrade is 15, of course. Next, we have level 4, which is Hurricane of Freedom. When Venti picks up an elemental orb or particle, he receives a 25% anemo damage bonus for 10 seconds. That's gnarly. That's just gnarly. Because this anemo damage is already something that you're going to want to work on anyway, so additional anemo damage is just amazing. Next, we have level 5, which is Concerto del Cielo. Increases the level of Skyward Sonnet by 3. Maximum level is 15, of course. And Storm of Defiance. At level 6, targets who take damage from Wind's Grand Ode have their anemo resistance decreased by 20% if an elemental absorption occurred, and then their resistance towards the corresponding element is also decreased by 20%. Like we were just talking about earlier, more resistance decreases is insanely good because it's just going to give you a huge amount of damage on top of what you're already doing. So this is just in line with doing more damage. There's kind of 2 different directions that you can go with Venti. You can either do DPS or support. I personally feel like I've had Venti for a while and I've been using him for a while. I personally feel like at the lower constellation levels, even at like C1, I would start thinking about DPS, but since I don't have him at C1, I've been using him purely as support, and he is amazing at being a support. I'm sure he's amazing at being a DPS too. I think that these constellation levels are so much more helpful for that. And being said he's a 5-star, most people aren't going to have him as a high constellation level, so I just made the conscious effort to make him a support rather than a DPS simply because I didn't have the constellations put into him. But you know, you can kind of build him whichever way you want to. Since you can't get him anymore, it's kind of hard to get the constellations anyways, so I just, you know, succumbed to the fact that he's probably a better support for me, but you can kind of build him whichever way you want to. With that being said, we're going to be looking at 2 different builds, the DPS and the support build. Like I said, depending on your constellation level, you may want to do one or the other. Personally, I have the support build built, and I will be showing that off first. So as far as weapons go for a support build, let's get into some weapons. So I actually have some weapons for Venti. Mainly, the 2 weapons that you want to really go for are either the Stringless or the Favonius Warbow. So the reason for this is basically energy recharge is a huge deal for Venti as a support because you want to be able to have his burst ready as often as possible. So if you don't have energy recharge anywhere other than your weapon, that's okay. Go with the Favonius Warbow. It's going to be one of the better weapons to go with so that you get extra energy recharge whenever you don't have it in your artifacts. Now, if you already do have artifacts that support energy recharge, then you could go with the Stringless to get more Elemental Mastery, because Elemental Mastery is going to be important whenever you are doing your E and your Q so that you can just get off extra damage whenever there is a reaction. More, damage whenever you pop those off to switch into your DPS to do more damage on top of that is always wonderful. I just got the Stringless, so I haven't leveled it up very far. I was using the Favonius Warbow up until like yesterday, and it's amazing. You could literally pop off your E and maybe twice, and you would have your elemental burst like literally every time. And his E is so quick to drop down anyways. Like the cooldown on his E is super fast that you don't really even worry about getting the energy. You worry about the cooldown of your burst, which is insane. So definitely like the Favonius Warbow, but I'm trying out the stringless. I still need to put some materials into it. Yeah. But anyways, those are the two weapons that you want to go with. Honestly, it really just depends on what your artifacts look like. If you have the energy recharge, you don't have to go with the Favonius Warbow. You can go with the stringless, which will help you do more damage. But if you need the elemental recharge, it's better to go with that so that you can pop off your Q and your E more often. Now, in terms of artifacts for Venti, as a support, I would definitely highly recommend going with a full set of the Viridescent Veneer. At a 2-piece, it's going to give you an additional 15% bonus of an emo damage, and at a 4-piece, it increases the swirl damage by 60% and decreases the elemental resistance of the element infused with swirl by 40% for 10 seconds. So that's kind of a mouthful, but essentially what it's doing is it's increasing the damage that you imbue your E or your Q with. As long as you're hitting something that's not just straight anemo damage, like if you're hydro swirling it or if you're electro swirling it, it's literally just decreasing the resistance of the other element by 40%. So either the hydro or the electro, which is actually really, really cool. So if you mainly focus on electro damage on your team, like with Kaching or something, and you imbue it with electro, then you're going to be doing a lot more electro damage. If you focus on pyro with maybe like Diluc or something like that, then you know, you're just doing extra pyro damage on top of that, which is pretty insane. Now, if you don't actually have the full set of the Viridescent Veneer, you could go with the Exile set, which is just going to give you some extra energy recharge. And using an Elemental Burst regenerates 2 energy for all party members, excluding the wearer for this, every 2 seconds for 6 seconds, and this effect cannot be stacked. So the reason that you would want to go with this is, of course, to help you get into your Elemental Burst as often as possible, especially if you're using the Stringless. You know, you could couple it with the Exile set just to help you get around the energy recharge issue. But essentially, you are focusing on getting up to that Q ability as often as possible and firing that off as often as possible. So whatever combination you have that will make you get there is definitely going to be the one to look at first. And then after that, you can slowly work into getting your, you know, your other weapon or your other set of artifacts worked up, you know, depending on your situation. No matter which set you end up mixing and matching together to make it work, definitely start to focus on your energy recharge as early as possible. If you can get a Sands or a timepiece that actually enables you to have energy recharge, that would be perfect. After that, you can start focusing on elemental mastery. That's going to be huge. Anemo damage is amazing because you're already doing so much anemo damage with your E and your Q as well. Anemo damage is going to be huge, so a goblet that has anemo damage is perfect. And then after that, you can just focus on attack because, you know, everything scales off of attack in this game. Now, in terms of talent priority, you definitely want to focus on your Q, your burst as much as possible early on. Definitely level this up as much as you can. I'm still hurting for books, so I can't go to level 6 like I need to. But then after that, focus on your Skyward Sonnet. Don't make the mistake that I did and put anything into your normal attack because you'll hardly ever use it as a support. So don't do this. Don't do what I did, okay? Don't do it. Building Venti as a DPS is slightly different than as a support, but it's pretty straightforward. So as far as weapons go, Skyward Harp is going to be the absolute best. It's not free-to-play friendly at all. It's, you know, a 5-star weapon. It's one of those things that a lot of people just don't have the luxury of having. Obviously, I don't have it either, so that's going to be the top option though, simply because it increases crit rate percent and increases crit damage by 20%, and hits have a 60% chance to inflict a small AoE attack dealing 125% of physical attack damage and can only occur once every 4 seconds. So it's literally just a DPS machine. It's just going to enable Venti to do a lot more damage, which is the entire point of being a DPS. Next, we do have the Stringless, which is one that I actually do have. Stringless is essentially going to give you extra elemental mastery, which helps you do a lot more swirl-based damage and stuff like that whenever you combine different things. That's pretty much what you're going after with the Stringless, but it actually increases your elemental skill and your burst damage by 24% as well, which is just amazing. Also not a very good free-to-play option, but it is there if you end up getting it. Next, we do have the Amos's Bow, which is actually pretty gnarly. It's going to increase attack percent and increases normal and charged attack damage by 12%, and normal and charged attack damage increases by 8% every 0.1 seconds up to 5 times. So it's literally just another DPS machine. Last but not least, in the not so free to play friendly realm is Rust, which everybody pretty much knows about by this point. Increases attack percent and increases normal attack damage by 40%, but decreases charged attack damage by 10%. So it kind of falls in line if you're a bow user that doesn't necessarily do charge shots a lot, then that's perfectly fine because you can just do extra damage on all of your normal attacks just by clicking, and that's pretty gnarly. Now, some more free to play options would definitely be the compound bow because you can craft it at the blacksmith. It's one of those that is just really, really good. I still use it on my official to this day. It's an amazing bow, and I definitely wouldn't overlook it if you are looking to do any kind of DPS with any kind of bow user. Compound bow is pretty gnarly. It is going to increase physical damage, normal attack and charge stack hits, increase attack by 4% and normal attack speed by 1.2% for 6 seconds. Max 4 stacks can only occur once every 0.3 seconds. So it's a pretty gnarly bow. And then probably the most free to play friendly option is actually the slingshot. So the slingshot is one of those that a lot of people are like, why would I use that? But it increases crit rate, and if a normal and charge attack hits a target within 0.3 seconds of being fired, increases the damage by 36%. Otherwise, it decreases it by 10%. So it's one of those like super budget friendly options to use if you don't have any of the other ones. If you haven't, gotten around to getting a compound bow yet, if you just aren't lucky to craft one by getting, weekly bosses to drop the bow, if you chose the other bow for whatever reason, slingshot is probably the best option to go with until you can move into another bow from there. Now, as far as artifacts go on a DPS, this is pretty much self-explanatory. The Veritas and Veneer are going to be your first option simply because it gives you extra Nemo damage and it allows you to decrease the elemental resistance by a ton on the 4-piece set. So this is definitely top option, getting a full 4-piece set of that. After that, though, if you wanted to switch it up a little bit, you could actually go with the Martial Artist set. So increases normal attack and charge attack damage by 15%, and after using an elemental skill, increases normal attack and charge attack damage by another 25% for 8 seconds. So that's actually really good. It helps output a ton of DPS. Just depends on which way you want to go. Or if you want to actually switch it up a little bit, you could actually end up going with the Resolution of Sojourner for the extra 18%, or what is the other one? The Braveheart? Yeah, the Braveheart for the extra 18% on attack. Those are good. Just a 2-piece set of those will do you just fine. And then add in a 2-piece of the Berserkers, and it's going to increase your crit rate by 12%, which is just going to help out a ton. I'm not a huge fan of this combination, but it definitely can put in some work. Increasing a little bit of crit rate will definitely help out your overall damage as well. Last but not least, you could go with a full 4-piece of the Wanderer's Troop if you ended up needing to. Increases elemental mastery by 80, which is fine, and then increases charge attack damage by 35% if the character is a catalyst or a bow user. So I definitely feel like this one, I feel like I would prefer this one over the previous one, the 18% and then the crit rate. I feel like this one would be a little bit more helpful. It kind of makes Venti more of like a pseudo support and DPS. Like it kind of makes him like a hybrid situation, but I feel like this one would end up fitting his kit a little bit better. But no matter how you end up doing your artifacts, just make sure you definitely want to focus on an emo damage. So getting a goblet that enables you to have an emo damage is going to be huge. And then after that, definitely focus on your crit rate and your crit damage out of the circlet and all your substats. Definitely make sure that those are a high priority. And then you can focus on attack, which typically goes on your hourglass or sands. And after that, it's pretty much energy recharge as much as possible. If you already have enough attack off of your weapon or something like that, if you get an attack percent weapon for whatever reason, then you could go with that and then just do energy recharge here. Or if you get energy recharge out of your substats or however you do it, just make sure that the combination of all of those together ends up prioritizing an emo damage first, crit rate, crit damage second, and then attack and then energy recharge. And you should be good. Now, when it comes to talents for your DPS, make sure that you want to focus on your normal attack first because simply you're going to be doing that a lot. And then after that, focus on your Q because you're going to be doing that a lot. And then last but not least, you focus on your E because it's probably going to be the least important out of all three of those. Now, let's go use Venti. Let's go kind of show off a little bit of what he's good for. So I saw this thing on Reddit the other day where if you come into this domain, you pop your Q and you activate, you can kind of couple these guys up really quickly. You kind of get like a small head start on these guys. This domain in general is so cancer. I hate this domain so much. But I'm going to try to use Venti as much as possible. And you guys can already see we're almost to our elemental burst again, which is pretty insane. Let's go ahead and pop that off again. And everybody's dead already. So cancer, man. So as you see, I definitely don't have Venti built up as a DPS option at all. Well, you know, I was gonna show off Venti in this domain, but I don't feel like that was really a good place to show him off. So let's go show him off somewhere else. So on our way to do a little show off, you can see this is kind of how that E ability can help you get just to exploring a little bit better. It's just one of those things that like I've grown so accustomed to that I literally will not use. I will not do anything without Venti in my party anymore, just because he's become like such a staple for just playing the game. But let's just do this little ley line here just so that we can kind of do some crowd control with it. So we're just gonna pop this, get a couple of enemies on the screen. I'm gonna get my Q, so you can see that's kind of how the E works there. And then let's go ahead and pop this. And you can see, all right, so he actually already threw down some rain. So it already imbued it with hydro damage on there. But yeah, I really don't even have to do anything right there. That's cool. And all right, cool. So we have a hydro abyss mage there. So this time, let's pop this off just because I hardly ever do it this way. As you can see that it still damages there as well. So like I said with Venti, your main goal is to just get your elemental burst off as often as possible. So that's pretty much what we're going to do here. Just going to do that, and then we're going to switch into our DPS, and we're just going to do some damage. It's kind of like the whole purpose. But you can see, even Venti's Q still does an insane amount of damage just to like random enemies. Like it's so good for like just mob controlling that it's insane. All right, so I'm going to do this just so that we don't knock him off the edge really quick. And then we'll just get some energy here, and we'll pop this Q off again. And this time you'll see it doesn't have any elemental like reactions, but if we pop Oz, it should imbue it into the electro damage. So pretty gnarly. And it really like accelerates some of the stuff. Like when I do my daily commissions, having Venti is just so helpful. Those like small daily commissions where you have to like kill like 5 or 8 enemies or something small like that. That stuff is insanely quick with Venti. Like he legit makes everything go by so much faster. It's so cool. So that's pretty much Venti, guys. There's not a whole lot more to really say about him, but he's one of those like units that if you have him, you definitely need to be using him if you're not. And if you haven't built him, he's 100% worth building. He's one of those characters that you're not going to be upset if you build him. Like, you're not going to feel let down or anything like that. So that's pretty much him, though, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thanks so much for watching. A quick reminder, I am on my path to 15,000 subs before the end of the year. If you guys want to help with that, you can hit that sub button. If not, completely understand. But until then, I will post another poll once this goes up, and then we will keep rolling from there. So thank you guys again. Catch you guys later.